Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Wells. I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I talk about games on the internet. Today, as is clear from this image next to me, we are back to the One Ring, and we're talking about the Rivendell setting book. This is more than just Rivendell. It's actually almost everything west of the Misty Mountains. Let's take a look, actually, at the PDF and show it off. So, here we go, and I'm going to go all the way to the map. Boom! This is what's called Eastern Eriador. Okay? And off the edge of the map over here to the west is where the Shire is. And so this is basically just the area from Bree to the Misty Mountains with Rivendell right there. And this stretch of road, what's called the East Road, that gets covered pretty solidly in both The Hobbit and in Fellowship of the Ring, right? We know where Bree is, we know about the Barrows down here, we know about Weathertop, we know about the Trollshaws, and we know about Rivendell. But there is a vast expanse of country both north and south of here, and a lot of it gets mentioned all the time. I've talked before about the Rohan book, which includes Dunland, and here we see kind of the northwestern tip of Dunland. Just off the map to the south is the Gap of Rohan. There's also, up here in the north, the kingdom that used to be called Angmar, which includes Carn Dûm here, and Mount Gundabad, Mount Graham, all of these kind of the remnants of the Dark Kingdom that the Witch King, the leader of the Nazgul, used to rule all of this. Also included in this whole area is the kingdom of Arnor, which is where the Dunedain come from, the men of the West, like Aragorn. And Arnor is gone, and Angmar is gone, and this entire region up here in the north, and to some lesser extent down here as well, because Tharbad is also gone, this is all kind of a post-apocalyptic area in a lot of ways. There used to be great kingdoms ruling here, incredible kingdoms, and they're gone. They've been destroyed and they have not been repopulated. We don't talk much about that post-apocalyptic nature of Middle-earth, but it's definitely there. We have, the last remaining kingdoms of men, with Gondor and Rohan, which are relatively small, and everything outside of those is just scattered pockets of civilization doing their best to survive in a vast and very dangerous wilderness. The Rangers are just, they couldn't be more post-apocalyptic if they were driving Mad Max cars around. They're people who are the remnants of a fallen kingdom, surviving as best they can in the wild, scraping for resources, looking out for monsters. One great example of this is down here. The kingdom of Tharbad used to be incredibly huge, and today they have what's called the crossing of Tharbad. There's this huge river that runs through here, and there was a huge bridge that crossed it. And it was said that back in the day, the an army of elves was able to cross, with a whole company abreast going across this bridge. And today it's just broken pillars with the bridge itself gone. And there's actually a fantastic picture. Let me see if I can find that picture just to show off Tharbad. Here we go. Here we go. See, that used to be... Stop it! That used to be a bridge. And these are just the great pillars that would go across this river from one side to the other. And so, yeah, it's a very post-apocalyptic region. And except for these small little pockets of civilization, like the Shire or Bree or Rivendell, there's really not a lot left there. And anyway, it's a really fascinating area of Middle-earth that doesn't get talked about a lot. And this book talks about it a lot, which is great. So you've got the kingdom of, or rather the region of Imladris, which is where Rivendell is. And, this whole area here, well, this comprises many different regions, but Rivendell itself gets an extensive description in this setting book. Here's Rivendell, chief building of which is Elrond's house, and then Elrond's house, in case you ever needed a ridiculously over analyzation of Elrond's house, this book has got your back. With not only the different floors, but also the catacombs underneath, which include both crypts and vaults and all kinds of really neat things. So anyway, we also get descriptions of Elrond and of Glorfindel and all these other kind of important people. So hooray for that. Other areas that get a really great description, well, let's not stop there. There's also a whole section on things to do in Rivendell. And as we've seen in a lot of these One Ring setting books, anytime you get to a particular place, especially an important haven, there's always a couple of little things you can do as fellowship undertakings or things like that. Rivendell has so many. Just pages and pages of things you can do while visiting Rivendell, including, I really like this one, writing a song, which has over a page of information about how to write a song and then how that song can affect your adventuring and when you can use it and what you can use it for, which is the kind of detail that makes me love this game. It's not just about going out and finding treasure or killing monsters. It's about, writing songs and the hope of being in a fellowship and staving off the shadow. And that feel and tone is what makes the One Ring the great game that it is. So, let's take a look next at what they call Eriador, which is pretty much, like I said when we showed the map, this is, whole area is called Eastern Eriador, which means there is a Western Eriador farther off, and that's where the Shire is, and that's where some other things are, including the far western coast. And this gives us a whole description of Arnor. Where's Arnor? There we talk about the realm of Arnor. And then it talks about Angmar, and it gives a really great history of what used to be here and why there's nothing here anymore. And then we get into the very specific regions of it, like Eregion, and which is always hard to say, the Trollshaws. We have the Cold Fells, the Etten Moors. We've got a really great description of Mount Graham. This is something that gets mentioned as a dismal place, but what really is there? We have just fantastic descriptions of what is in Mount Graham, what is in Angmar, what is in Gundabad and Carn Dûm. And then further to the south, we get the Barrow-Downs, which, of course, feature very prominently in the Fellowship of the Ring novel, got left out of the movie, but there's a lot of really great spooky stuff there in the Barrow-Downs, and this book does not shy away from them. We get fantastic descriptions of the White King and of the various other Barrow tombs and all of this wonderful stuff. So, typical of these books and of this game line, the setting book is very complete. It is full of fantastic information, full of story hooks left and right, and then, of course, lots and lots of great adversaries, monsters that you can fight, people that you can fight. And this one, the Rivendell book, is of a slightly higher difficulty level. Let's say that. The only reason that the hobbits were able to survive the Barrow-Downs was because somebody came along and helped them. It's not the kind of thing that starting characters are going to be able to do by themselves. And so when we go through the adversaries here, there's, whole new enhancements, new special abilities that you can give to monsters, including very, descriptions like the Black Breath and the Black Dread, that the Nazgul have, and there are some stats for Nazgul in here. So we've got, trolls, several different trolls. We've got the wargs. The Ettins are like trolls, but, whereas normal trolls in Middle-earth used to be stone, and sunlight can turn them back into stone, Ettins are still just stone. They are more or less indistinguishable from boulders, and they're kind of fun. And they can be a lot more inhuman with extra heads or arms, and there's rules for that as well. There's the men of Rhudaur, and we talked about them in Wilderland on the other side, on just east of the Misty Mountains. There's still some that live west of the Misty Mountains in the ruins of Angmar as well. And then eventually we have this whole section on undead, which is wraiths and wights, and of course the Nazgul. We've got bog soldiers and zombies, all of these fantastic undead with specters and things. And we have the White King, and then we have the Lord of the Nazgul himself, the Witch King. And it makes sure to explain that he lives currently over in Morgul in Mordor, but he used to rule Angmar, and depending on what time period you're playing in, you might choose to have him still be in Angmar or roaming around looking for stuff. So there's a lot of great things you can do. And, he is an absolutely horrific bad guy to try to fight, as befits the Witch King. So, the other major section of this book, well, let's say that there's 3 major sections of this book. One, of course, is the setting information that includes all of the detailed history and the maps and the bad guys and all of that. The second one is the magical treasure. And the book about Erebor includes a lot of magical treasure as well. And it repeats some of these rules, and it changes some of them. Well, I shouldn't say it changes. It just has a very dwarfish focus. This one has a more broad focus, not just in dwarves, but in treasure created by elves and by men. Now, like I said, this is not a game about running around fighting monster and getting treasure. But you can absolutely see in the Lord of the Rings story the kind of nascent template that it would eventually create D&D, right? We have the company of hobbits and dwarves in The Hobbit going along, and they find those 3 trolls and they kill them, and then there's a treasure hoard and they get magic swords out of it. Like, that's a core part of what this game is about. The difference is that the One Ring wants to focus much more on the idea that magic items are A, very rare, and B, probably famous. The idea is not just that here's a magic sword and it doesn't mean anything, but, here's a magic sword and its name is Glamdring, the foe hammer, and it was forged by these people and it accomplishes these purposes. Here's this little sword that they found for Bilbo, which doesn't have a name, and Glowin is actually, he tells him, only the really best swords had names, but this was still forged by elves to fight orcs, and it's still powerful, and it's still not just the only sword, Bilbo named it Sting, but it not only is it the only sword he uses throughout his entire adventure, but he passes it on to Frodo, and Frodo uses it throughout his entire adventure. And it's not like every fight they're going to find a better sword and just Sting gets tossed in a closet somewhere. No. A magic weapon, a magic item of any kind means something. It has value. And if you're fortunate enough to find one, you'll be using it forever and passing it on down the line to your children and grandchildren, because they're never going to find another sword as awesome as that one that you found. And so this has really fantastic rules for treasure. And the one I want to focus on first is this, called the Magical Treasure Index. And the idea behind this is that you are going, as the lore master, as the game master, before the game starts, you're going to create the whole, basically the entire index, the entire collection of treasure that will be found over the course of the entire campaign. And there's rules for how to do this and what kind of things. You don't have to come up with all of it whole cloth on your own without guidance. But coming up with it in advance means that you have a chance to decide what is going to be there and how it is going to help the campaign and who it's for. So let's show as an example here. This one, a magical treasure index for a campaign called Ruins of the North, and that is the adventure book that is a companion to Rivendell, and we'll get to that probably next month. So if you're going to run a company of 4 people through those adventures, then here is the treasure you're going to deal with. First are precious objects. These are not magical, though they are formed with magic. They're mostly just neat things that are worth a lot of treasure. And so if you find a really valuable object in a treasure hoard, but it's not magical, it's what's called a precious object. And so, for example, a great golden necklace of dwarven make set about with dozens of tiny amethysts that sparkle in the sunlight. It was once worn by the finest beauty of Beleriand, or so the dwarves would have you believe, worth 40 treasure points. And that's it. But that's amazing. That's still really impressive. 40 treasure points is enough to keep your character in good standing in your culture for a very long time. You can finance a great deal with 40 treasure points. But wondrous artifacts are where we get into more of the actual magic weapon, magic object kind of thing. And wondrous artifacts have blessings. And a blessing is basically a quality that improves a skill. So, for example, a beautifully carved ring of gold that gilds the wearer's honeyed words, a blessing to courtesy. So while you are wearing that ring, anytime you make a courtesy check, you get to add a bonus to it. And so here we have all these wondrous artifacts. And the next page are famous weapons and armor. And there's one designed for each companion in the campaign. And this is something specifically intended for that person. So Ferrith, who is a ranger of the north, they've crafted for him the Blade of Arahel, which is a long sword. Craftsmanship Númenórean. It comes from the people of Númenor. It has a bane against evil men and undead, which means it works better against them. And then it has qualities. A famous weapon or armor can have up to 3 qualities. And this is really fun because it helps the weapon to kind of improve with you as you improve, because you only get the first quality when you find it. And then when you have a chance to level up and pick a new reward or valor, which happens at certain points during character progress, instead of picking one for yourself, or instead of getting a new item from your cultural rewards, you can choose to unlock a new quality from this famous item that you've had. And so that is what helps the sword or the weapon, the magic item, keep pace with the character. That's why Bilbo and Frodo never had to chuck Sting in a shelf somewhere, is because Sting continued to improve as they did, which is a really great system for magic items. So that is this. Now there are others. For example, this one. This is for the Darkening of Mirkwood, which is a much longer campaign. It has something like 60, 70, 80 adventures in it, and it takes generations of characters to get through the entire campaign. It's absolutely wonderful. I've done a review on it before, and it's one of the main reasons to play this game because it's a fantastic campaign. So here is a sample magical treasure index for the these 5 or 6, whatever it is, core kind of pre-gen characters to go through this campaign. So it has more precious objects. It has actually an entire extra page here of the wondrous artifacts, and then it has a famous weapon and armor for each companion that has 3 qualities instead of just 2. So these are good examples of how this magical treasure system can fit into a campaign. And over the course of the campaign, then as the characters encounter a treasure hoard or something like that, they hit a point where they could acquire a magic object, then all the lore master has to do is look at their magical treasure index and go, oh, okay, what do they find? Well, this was an orc horde, and it was in this place where they had attacked some dwarves. So how about this one? A golden circlet with dwarven runes that causes the wearer to find precisely what he is looking for. A blessing to search. So then you can pull these out, and using this index helps keep the magic item level of the campaign at the right saturation, the right amount of density, the right quantity of magic items, so that they still feel rare and unique. In one of my D&D campaigns, I'm running 7 D&D campaigns right now. In one of them, and this is partly my fault because I was a little more liberal with the magic items than you are technically supposed to be. The characters are only level 10, and most of them have more magic items than they can conceivably use. There are always things that they forget that they have. The other day I was having a conversation with one of the players, and he's like, we found this ring early on that makes sure that people can't read my mind magically, and that's never come up. And that's because I rolled it randomly on a table and handed it to him, and we all thought it was cool. And then he keeps forgetting that he has it, and I keep forgetting to throw out bad guys that can read minds. And so this magic item doesn't really help anything or apply, and it doesn't seem cool and wondrous because he's got so many other magic items instead. A system like this, the magic item index, helps stop that problem before it starts, because you know exactly what the magic items are going to be and how they fit into the story. And this is a lot of upfront work for the GM, but honestly not as much as you would suspect, because there's a very good system for creating this kind of stuff. So for example, precious objects. What are you going to do with a precious object? Well, right here, you're going to roll 3 dice. What's the main material? What shape is it? Who made it? What's the craftsmanship of it? And then on the next page, how much treasure is it worth? Done. You roll 4 dice 5 or 6 times, and you come up with 5 or 6 precious objects, and you slap them into your magic item index, and you're done. Wondrous artifacts are a little more complicated, but like I said, it's basically all they do is there's a wondrous artifact that has a blessing, sometimes 2 blessings or sometimes a greater blessing, and that's just up to you. And there's a little table you can roll on here. So there are 6 skill categories and 3 skills in each one. So you roll 2 dice, and let's say you get a 3 and a 5. Well, 3 is perception, 5 is search. There you go. It's a magic item that has a blessing for search. And this suggests that search could be a ringlet, a circlet, or a staff. So those are all pretty easy to come up with. And then when you get to the famous weapons and armor, that's more complicated, but it's also a lot of fun, and you only have to do it once for each member of the campaign, so 4 or 5 times, and you get to really craft a specific item that has history and that has a lot of fun things to it. Now, how do you get these magical pieces of treasure? With magical treasure rolls. And that is very simple. The idea behind this is anytime you have a treasure hoard, you roll just the little skill die, the feat die. And if you get a number, nothing happens. If you get a rune, you get magical items. But the Gandalf rune means that you got a just normal, straight magical item. The Sauron rune means you get a magical item, but either it is cursed or you become cursed in some way by finding it, either through, the kind of dragon madness of greed, or there's some other problem attached to it. And so that's it. It's a very simple system to use and really evocative. And as everything else in this game system, it really supports the style of gameplay and the tone of the One Ring and of Middle-earth. Now, the final section, I said there were 3 sections of this book. There's the world, and there is the magic items, and then we have the heroic cultures. Now, I recommend always that everyone who wants to play the One Ring picks up the core book first and the Adventurer's Companion second, because that has all of the heroic cultures in it and is a really wonderful resource for building characters and creating characters. What that does is it has collected all of the heroic cultures from all of the other setting books and put them all into one volume. And so if you already have the Adventurer's Companion, then you already have the basic information about the 2 new cultures in this book, which are the Rangers of the North and the Elves of Rivendell. This book goes into more detail, but if you've got the Adventurer's Companion, you already have most of this information. What the Rangers and the Elves are they are advanced character cultures. The idea of the characters in this game is that they are new people, new heroes, just setting out at the beginning of the campaign on their career as adventurers. So this is where you get people like Sam, people like Gimli. Gimli's been around, he's experienced, he knows how to fight, but he hasn't made a name for himself yet. He hasn't done any major anything yet, and so he's kind of a newbie. On the other hand, Aragorn is not. He has been around for a very long time. He has, been fighting against the Shadow for decades, and so he comes from a more advanced culture. His starting statistics are more impressive. His starting skills are a little better, but he levels up more slowly as a nice balancing factor. And so this game recommends that if you are starting a brand new campaign, don't include Rangers and the Elves of Rivendell in it. But once you are several adventures into that campaign and characters have kind of leveled up a little bit, then you can put in Rangers. Then you can put in the High Elves. Another great use of these advanced cultures is if you've got a group of newbies who maybe have never role-played before, or they've never role-played in this system, and you want to give them a guide or a mentor, which is exactly the role that Aragorn filled with the hobbits. If you've got a group that's just 4 hobbits and they keep getting slaughtered by every bad guy that you find, it might be a good idea, even from the very beginning of the campaign, to give them a ranger or a Glorfindel or somebody like that who can help them out and kind of handle some of the major combat and things like that, so that then the little hobbits can do their own thing without being just slaughtered in every fight. So there's a lot of different ways to use these heroic cultures. Anyway, they're really interesting. I like them a lot. The Rangers of the North have some really cool options. And then, of course, the High Elves of Rivendell have got some great things that they can do. So it's all awesome. And then at the very end of the book, of course, we have where are they? The pre-gen characters. If you are curious, or if you just want to use a pre-gen, then here's Ferrith, a Ranger of the North, and here's Kermakar, a Rivendell elf. So, and then there's the blank magical treasure index at the back if you want to use that, and craft that. And of course, the map and the map system is one of the great parts of this game. So, I love this game system. It is one of my very favorites, and in particular, I really love the setting books, and this is an example of why. It has wonderful information that really encourages and incentivizes the right tone and mood of a Middle-earth game, where you're going to be finding magic items, but they're going to be rare and they're going to be very unique. You're going to be fighting monsters, but just as much emphasis goes into singing songs, meeting important people. The Lord of the Rings novels are as much travelogues as they are adventure stories. And this game helps you recreate that feel, and I really love it. So anyway, thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope, after all of my reviews on the subject, that I have enticed you to play The One Ring. It is an absolutely phenomenal game, and definitely worth your time. So, anyway, thank you very much. I am super bad at promoting my other stuff, so let me pause just a minute and say, go read some of my books. I've got a lot of really great ones. And I also am a professional game master, and if you're interested in having me run a game or a campaign for you and your friends, there's information and links in the notes below this video that can help you get that hooked up. So, anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Dan Wells, and you are awesome.